It was not a game of valuation, it was a game of value. Some traditional businesses are also very, very powerful models. But unfortunately, people don't want to look at it. Investors don't want to look at it. But I think there's a lot of work that founders have to be prepared for before they get onto this journey. And there is nobody preparing them. The idea of problem solving and facing challenges every day and resolving those, whether it's for myself or somebody else, has always been a passion.
Hey everyone, welcome to RoboSapien podcast. Abha say hi. Hi. So in today's episode, we have a very prestigious guest, which is Dhanashree bhatkal. She has been an entrepreneur and a startup owner and working in startups before it was a buzzword. Yeah, I think she started her journey in the early, 2000.
Okay.
So she also had a food truck business. We
Yes.
talked about it in detail. So if you are thinking that we are going to talk about everything here, so no, that's not the case. But she has started many businesses in the early 2000s. She has failed. She has recovered from it, learned from it, and now she is an Indian investor.
Correct.
She is running one more startup right now, and she is invested in teaching people the importance of finance. Like finance is something that is very important, for any entrepreneur or any startup owner because of many different reasons that we have discussed in the episode.
Exactly.
So
We have discussed the importance of being financially educated while being in the startup world.
yeah, something that we were not quite aware of because we are ourselves the tech guys, so we do not care that much about finance. But now after this conversation we realize that okay, this is very important fact to be financially educated to become an entrepreneur and a startup owner. So that's what we are going to work on, and we really hope you guys will enjoy today's conversation, take something away from it.
Absolutely.
So before you go into our conversation, make sure to hit the bell icon and smash the subscribe button.
So I think my journey, I talk about it in two parts. One as a finance professional who started out with a business at 21. So, I think similar to your kind of story that you just told me. Had not even completed my education, got hold of a few people who were like-minded. Five, six of us got together and started something which at that point in time was like, it was tout. We got a lot of publicity, a lot of newspapers spoke about us, interviews. So what we were doing was we started out with a food truck. And I'm talking of 2001, which was the
Wow.
time when food trucks were not very common, right? They were there abroad, but it was not common in India,
Right.
especially not in
Yeah.
Mumbai. We didn't have a single one. And we tied up with Dilip Chabria, DC Designs, and he made this beautiful swanky truck for us. And we got the permissions through for the first year, and we got a centralized kitchen done and all of that. A little outside the segment, of course, because I'm a finance professional, qualified CA MBA. But then this is something I wanted to do. And for like the first 6 8 months it was a dream because we not only did we have revenue tractions, we actually saw profits, and which is like kind of rare. You don't usually see it. I mean, now I know in hindsight that you don't see it for 12 to 15 months, especially in today's times. So we saw that and we were riding on a high. We thought, okay, now there's no looking back, all done, ticked off everything. But
Yeah.
12 months forward, I always speak about this because I think this is a very important factor when people are starting out, which we didn't know. We didn't have mentors. We were actually mentoring each other, kind of. It was a trial and error kind of
Right.
model.
Yeah, figuring
And
it out
12
with the flow.
months, absolutely. And 12 months forward, the business had tanked completely, and
Oh.
then we don't know what happened. In 6 8 months, it was like it thrived, and then 5 6 months, it nosedived. And it took us a long time to see, okay, what went wrong, what started right, what might have gone wrong. And that was like introspection, a lot of self study, a lot of process and system study, people study. But I think the biggest lessons that we took away from there were what helped us to sort of transform and turn around that model in the next 4 to 5 years. 5 years from there, we got acquired. And that is our journey of learning hands on, So it's like, I know there are a lot of theories in the market. I know there are lots of coaches, mentors, advisors, and no offense meant, everyone knows their job.
Right.
But I think our the little edge that we had was that we had been there, we had done
Hmm.
that ourselves. So our lessons were hands on. They were practical lessons that we were able to, sort of
Yeah.
do. And fast forward to about 2006, 2007, we did another little venture with the lessons that we had learned from the past, and got acquired once more, two,
Okay.
3 years later. And this is before startups became,
A thing.
the in thing. The dynamics were a
Yeah.
little different at that time, of course. It was not a game of valuation, it was a game of value back then.
Okay.
Hmm.
And in 2010, we said, okay, we've done, we've been almost serial entrepreneurs now with two things under our belt. And now is the time we feel that we've got 10 years almost of experience behind us. Why not create a capsule where we can actually put everything that we know on the table and help clients or mentees or in whatever formats they come share what we know in an encapsulated manner, so that it took us 10 years to have that
Hmm.
learning curve, and we thought if we are able to pass this on to people, maybe we can pass this on where the person might then be able to do the same thing in 1 or 2 years.
Right.
That's an 80% reduction of time,
Yeah,
it's saving of
absolutely.
time and energy. And I think that's how a money tree, the firm that I founded,
Yeah.
co-founded with one of my co-founders who has been we've been together since 2001. So we're still sort of, so our money tree is just the two of us now. And then over the years of the last 12, 13 years, we've built teams, and we've our growth has been actually about the growth of founders that we worked with. And essentially, we are not very startup focused alone. We also work a lot with traditional businesses because they kind of have got overshadowed with all the, startup things. That are some traditional businesses are also very, very powerful models.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, people don't want to look at it. Investors don't want to
Right.
look at it
Yeah.
because it's just not the in thing anymore. That's what people think. So we work with both of these, and we work a lot with aspiring founders because great ideas also need great implementations.
Yeah,
We know
absolutely.
we went
So,
through that. We had a good idea, but
right.
वो लग गया तुक्का. But when it went somewhere, it just nosedived because of some things we didn't know.
Right.
So I think we're trying to play the role that we didn't have anyone to do that for us. And we're trying to become that for aspiring and new founders, basically. So
Yeah.
that's been our journey throughout.
Wow.
On
Wow.
the other note, we also realize that we have a limit to how many people we can reach out to through this
Hmm.
model. Many founders or aspiring founders are not going to be able to um, actually hire a coach or a mentor, or may not have an access to a mentor. They may not be in a position to hire a firm who can do these services for them, other than just kind of giving them information about it. So the two platforms that we thought we should use, one is every podcast, every interview, anything that we get, we want to talk about this to people because ease of doing business is just a system that gives you perhaps, even that has a lot of work that needs to be done. But I think there's a lot of work that founders have to be prepared for before they get onto this journey,
Yeah.
and there is nobody preparing them for it. So one
Yeah,
was the platform
absolutely.
of
That's a big
social
problem.
media.
That's a very big problem.
Exactly.
It is, it is. And the other was the book that
Hmm.
I wrote, which you know,
The
um, debuted
money,
in October.
right?
Money. We talk. It's what's left, what's right is the
Yeah,
title of
was
it.
left, was right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember
So
I started reading it actually very
okay.
recently.
So that's another thing. Founders or not, whether it's founders, people working or whatever. The idea was to simplify financial freedom, dividing it into two parts of the left and right brain, and I think we wanted to give it in a model again encapsulate it in a way that anyone who reads it can pick up something and then create what they want to, whether it's business or personal. So I think yeah, we just that's been our vision: financial education, financial literacy, getting people into that space. So my
Wow.
introduction went really long. So
Yeah, no, it's actually very, very inspiring actually. And second thing is actually very relatable to what we are trying to do because
And
we face the same situation as we
yes,
told you. Like we face
exactly.
the same situation where we were not aware of what we can do, how to start a startup, how to run a startup, what problems we will face, right? So those things are something we struggle with, and we don't want our juniors or people who are coming out of colleges to face the same thing. That's why we started this podcast, and that's why we
Yes,
bring
yes.
you. You know,
Exactly.
Yeah, I
I was
realized.
I
Yeah.
was also thinking the same thing. I was like,
yeah,
we have like very similar story, and I like related on one more thing. Like as you said, that food truck thing. That's
Hmm.
also one of my dreams to start one
Ah,
day.
okay.
yeah. He's a
But
big
now I
foodie
think
actually.
now is a great time again for food trucks, right? They're picking
Yeah,
up now. You have a lot of those, and I hope permissions and all that has gotten easier.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
yeah.
There
yeah,
are
yeah. A lot
many
of
of
fruit
those now.
trucks have actually opened in Jaipur as well very recently.
Hmm.
Since we are placed in Jaipur, we know that everywhere we go, we find at least one food truck around the corner, and people are always gathering around, eating
That's
from there.
wonderful.
People are becoming quite foodie nowadays.
Hmm.
That's also a good thing. But to a formal introduction, welcome Dhanashree to the RoboSapien podcast. We are so blessed to have you as a guest on our
Thank you.
podcast today. And so, one thing that I wanted to ask from the very beginning, since we connected, and I listened to your story, read about you online, watched a few of your podcasts that were available online. I figured one thing that obviously comes to everybody's mind is that you became a millionaire at a very young age, right? So rather than becoming just an investor, what inspired you to become an entrepreneur instead and start a business rather than just become an investor, invest in startup since you have that privilege? What inspired you to do that?
I think if I see, I think entrepreneurship is a very, there are people I feel who are born to be entrepreneurs. Of course, it's a skill that can also be developed. I don't deny that. But I think some of us are just, I kind of, I think, always knew that I was going to be an entrepreneur and I did not want to, only sort of be what you're talking about, investments. So that's more like a passive income, which is
Right.
great, of course. And if that's a choice people make, no problem with that. But for
Yeah.
me, I think the idea of problem solving and facing challenges every day and resolving those, whether it's for myself or somebody else, has always been a passion. So it's like even before I got into entrepreneurship, I was putting my fingers everywhere to see whatever I could do, on a day-to-day basis. So it's like like one of the things is that I started doing some accounting and this kind of work when I was like 17. When a lot of people would say, oh, but you don't need to do it. But it was not about need. It was about going out there and putting myself out there and seeing how much can I stretch, what more can I do, what am I missing
Yeah.
out in life. So I think that is something that I'm that kind of a person. And I think it would be incorrect if I said that, that there was a reason or a very clear goal or something like that. To be very honest, when I started out, I only knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur because it was fascinating for me.
Yeah.
I had finished my education, or I was almost on the verge of finishing it. And I just felt that I'm cut out for this. I want to do this. And yeah, I think today I do feel though, even at this point in time, even if I am doing angel investing or things like that, I still feel I'm not the person who would be able to just say, acha yaar, investments ho rahe hain, अच्छे returns aa rahe, let me just be, I'll just, I can't do that. It's like every day I want to get up and resolve a challenge, solve a problem, that's meet people, communicate. I think that's just me, and I'm just living my life out the way I would have, wanted to. And I think entrepreneurship is a wonderful vehicle for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's like being an entrepreneur is like living a dream. You can actually do what you actually believe, you know.
Yes,
Otherwise,
yes,
usually people are just stuck in the job where they are doing what they are told, not rather than doing what they really want to do. They are not even able to express their, thoughts and the ideas to people just because they think
yeah.
that it's a safe path.
Also,
But
if I could just intervene, there's another element I feel to entrepreneurship, which has
yeah,
been very
please.
close to my heart,
Mhm.
has also been the fact that as an entrepreneur, you have many, many more opportunities to transform the world around you. you're always in a position to transform the lives of people, whether they are in your close circles or even if you go out when the business gets bigger, or when as a thought leader, when you get bigger, maybe that circle increases. So I think they want to sort of make a difference to the world that I have lived, is also been a very, very important, life purpose for me. So I think that also has played a very big role, which I feel I wouldn't have been able to do in any other space as much.
Yeah, that's
Right.
amazing.
So yeah, so being an entrepreneur is like always about making a difficult situation into an opportunity, right?
Yes, yes. I
So
या
think, yeah,
आपदा को अवसर में बदलते हुए.
absolutely. I mean,
exactly.
absolutely. So, whichever way we look at it, we call it problem solving, we call it resolving challenges. We say we convert every problem into a challenge, or we say whichever way we put it. I think yes, that is actually a mindset also. The reason why mindset plays such an important role in my book, it takes half of the book because of that also. Because I think, like you rightly said, if you're a problem solver by nature, I think that's one of the most important prerequisites for anyone who's considering entrepreneurship.
True.
Because if, there are people who get tensed and stressed out when a problem comes in front of them. And there
Yeah,
are people who get excited. Oh, okay, this has come now. Let me see how to solve it. Very two very, very different categories of people, both equally good. Again, not being judgmental, both have that, but it's important to know your pros and cons, what excites you, so that you make the right decisions. And I think it's important to be the second category if you don't want to burn yourself out, if you're
yeah,
planning to be an entrepreneur. I think that's one of the first few things.
yeah. Absolutely
Right.
agreed.
So, so like in your journey, as you shared, what was the most challenging situation that you have faced and turned that into an opportunity for yourself?
I think, like I probably have shared before, uh, when I started out the business of the food truck, and when everything went so smooth and easy in the first 6 or 7 months, people around you start placing expectations. But I already had those expectations even before I started out, because of a certain background or education or whatever else that I come from. But once those 6, 7 months happened and people realized the business had picked up and doing well, those expectations suddenly start mounting. Then people are thinking, oh, like in 3 years, you're going to become like this,
Hmm.
whatever. So, however they want to define that. I think my biggest challenge was when I realized that something I had built had nosedived. You know, we were a larger team, and some of the team members just dissipated after that. I mean, they just lost interest because, like I said,
Yeah.
not everyone likes enjoys a challenge.
Right.
So some
True.
of them just went out, and my current co-founder and I are the people who stuck on. And we said, no, if something's gotten wrong, we need to see what's gone wrong. We have to evaluate and see how we can correct it. Be agile, because maybe we change the model. Maybe okay, food truck nahi ho raha hai because, okay, so in Bombay, we were facing a lot of problems with permissions after the first 12 months were done. And actually, that put us into that bottleneck. So we were not able to get out of that. We tried every other way, and it didn't work out. So we switched the model entirely. I think that journey of being at rock bottom after seeing that glimpse of success, and that journey from that rock bottom to turning it around and getting acquired in 4 years, I think that has been the biggest problem changing to opportunity, because we kind of restructured everything. We restructured the model itself, but we remain in the same space. But we went into the B2B model. We utilized the centralized kitchen more like what we popularly call cloud kitchen now.
Cloud kitchen.
It
Yes.
was not called that then, but that's
Okay.
the because we didn't have that extent of internet connectivity at that point in time. But we did it using an offline online mix that we could at that point in time. So we utilized the central. We said, okay, now let's park the food truck. नहीं हो रहा है ना, permissions तो जाने दो. Now we need to see कि centralized kitchen में जो कर रहे हैं वो food truck से नहीं जा सकता है. What is the other way that we can reach out and acquire customers? At that point, as luck would have it, I mean, if you're doing your 100%, you're going to have luck on your side. That's what I believe. And there was this new chain of baristas and cafe coffee days that had just entered Bombay in, a year or two prior to that.
Mhm.
So They are great with coffees, but they were all outsourcing. All of the cafes then were outsourcing food. They still do, in fact, most of them. So we thought that's a perfect time for us. We have a centralized kitchen. We have qualities to speak for. Why not just go out there and approach them and move it to B2B? And
Right.
that's where we kind of got a sustainable model, which kind of began to turn things around. And then, of course, it didn't stop with one or two chains. It went on to become that. So what I'm trying to, I mean, that would be a single largest also because it was our first.
Right.
After that, we've done several times, I think on a day-to-day basis, where a problem comes and we feel, okay, wow, I think we can crack it like this. That's I think a part of life now also.
And I believe like every startup that is failing at some point, pivoting is the like major turn point for them.
Correct. Pivoting and upskilling also.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
know, I think not talked about enough because pivoting requires upskilling. It requires acceptance of what has gone wrong. It also
Mm.
requires a high level of upskilling. And if that is done, I think most founders will be able to salvage or revive any business which is failing.
Right. Actually, there's a lot of learning and unlearning happening at the same time at these points. In even in the previous podcast, we discussed with one of the founders that he said that there's a lot of unlearning you have to do when the bad times come, and the bad times do come always, and you
Yes,
have to do a lot of unlearning, and that is the most difficult, right? So,
true.
and I don't understand like how unlearning can be that difficult because like maybe it's because we do not know that much, so we haven't learned that much, so we don't need to unlearn anything right now. But still, have you faced that issue ever? Like the problem of unlearning things like during that period?
I think one of the first few things when you see that a business which is close to your heart especially is not working out, I think if you're a good learner,
Hmm.
then unlearning also comes to you naturally. You have to be, every failure is going to teach us something. And at that point in time, it's also going to teach us first as to what is it that brought you there. And those are the things you have to. So it's a very natural process. When you're learning something new, it naturally gives you the opportunity to unlearn what didn't work before that. No, that is the reason we are upscaling. But I think what happens is many founders that we work with, we have seen, we really need to convince them, almost compel them to let this part go. You know, the unlearning which happens either in the habits you form, the muscle memory in the whole team that is formed, the product you're doing now, you know, you want to tweak it, you know what is not working in it, but it's come so close to your heart that now you don't want to unlearn anything. Now you feel, no, this defines my worth and that defines
Yeah.
my business. So you don't want to let go. So I don't think unlearning is difficult. I think it is accepting the fact that something has not worked, and unlearning is the only way forward if you want to learn something new and have new results. People often are repeating the same things and thinking, no, this time the result is going to be different. How? See, at the end of the day, even if there are other elements, it is simple arithmetic. No, if I'm going to continue on the calculator doing 2 plus 2, I am going to get 4 only. So I think that is, I think acceptance is a problem why people are unable to unlearn and unable to learn anything new also.
Right. Absolutely. But
Right.
I
So,
think
yeah,
I
go on.
yeah, I think that people are quite afraid that if they, if they like, if they accept that unlearning path, that they might lose their identity of how, why, and how they started the
Yes.
startup. Right? That is actually, I think, is a very big problem and a very big concern when you're doing this unlearning, when you're going trace backing all your issues and all the problems you have faced. Right?
I think, yeah, I think you're right. So it is again, we come back to the point of mindset.
Yeah.
And we come back to the also another thing, which is the social construct, right?
Hmm.
We sort of, whether we like to believe it or not, we sort of know that when something is failing and I completely do something different now, what I will need to deal with my own thing is one part. I will also need to answer people's questions. And sometimes
Right.
that can be very stressful, because see, not that they have anything to do with it in any case, right? But people have questions, they'll have
Yeah.
judgments also about it. And
True.
sometimes I think a combination of what we are dealing with already and what somebody else might have opinions about you together can be a very dangerous, concoction. And we will keep, because of this, a lot of founders tend to postpone what they already know should be done.
Right.
मालूम है नहीं चल रहा है. I know I need to make a change. Either I need to shut down, I need to revive, I need to change my product mix, or maybe my pricing mix, or maybe different markets, or whatever it is. But I'm afraid to do it. Why? Because I will get judged for it. Because I
Yeah.
feel my self-worth depends on it. Because I feel that if I did it and I failed, so basically failure has become like this, something to avoid.
Right.
I personally think failure is truly, and this is not just in the books, failure truly is a stepping stone. I think
Yeah.
people who fail and then come around and then rise and see success have very, very beautiful trajectories,
Yeah. I
very
think.
beautiful career trajectories.
Yeah, I think the best thing you can do is have a thick skin. Have a
Sorry,
thick
thick
skin.
skin.
Thick
Yes,
skin.
yes,
Listen to whatever criticism you get. Listen, absorb what you actually need, and let go of what you don't need. Have a thick
absolutely
skin and have a good filter for that. And
true.
I think that must take a lot of time and a lot of failures to develop that.
I think that's also, yeah, absolutely. I think that's another element which we must start adding as a prerequisite for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Being able to keep judgments away, being able to, like you said, perhaps, develop thick skin so that you're not impacted, because you can't take productive decisions if you're constantly thinking of how you want to be judged for it.
Right.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
Right. So, like, on that point, as you are from a financial background, right?
yes,
So, do you think that I'm changing a conversation a little bit?
no problem.
So, do you think that every startup founder first gets some financial education and only then should start the business, or should they learn as they go with the flow?
Okay, I'm so glad you asked this question, because according to me, financial education is a primary block of education that every person, founder or non-founder, must have. But yes, as a founder, I believe that financial education, see, we're not saying that if it's a technology person or it's an operations, expert, we're not saying they have to go get a degree, which is finance. We're not talking about that. But basic financial management of, how you can monetize, because see, at the end of the day, every founder gets into business to make a profit.
Right.
Everything else is okay. Valuation, visibility, all that is important. But we
Mm.
want profit at the end of the day. How does profit come? When you monetize your product or service. How do you monetize your product or service? So if as an operations person or a technology person or even a business development person, you know certain components and you might know them really, really well about your product or your service or your business. But if you do not have the skills to monetize it by understanding various elements of financial management, at some point in time, that is going to be a roadblock. Now, I can tell you by whatever experience we've had all these years that financial management is like the backbone of a business. It's the core function of the business. If
Right.
you are not in control of your numbers, if you're not in control of how much sales you're making every day, what kind of costs you have, what are the fixed costs, what are the variable costs, are your ratios in place, what is your gross profit, tax jaane ke baad, what is your net profit going to be, how are you going to distribute this to your investors, how are the founders going to share it if they want to, or what kind of salary is optimal for them. These are not elements which can come ad hoc from anywhere, because at the end of the day, if you want your business to grow, you want it to scale up, and you want to retain profits at every point, then financial management is key for this. So I think that either, one of the founders, whoever is sort of ideally, you should look for a co-founder who is from a financial management or a business management or a financial background. I believe in that also because, I often find, like two founders will come to us and say, okay, we are structuring this and we have an idea, great idea, great implementation plan when it comes to the operational part of it. So if there are tech guys, they know exactly how they want to build their product, in what stages, what amount they'll need for the development, all that.
Yeah.
Outside that, they are usually lost about what other costs are going to be. They don't even account for that. So you have this nice project report which talks only about technology and technology and technology, because the founders are technology. And then
Right.
if you ask them, okay, are you considering what you're going to do about financial management once it actually takes off? No, that's not something they've thought about, because they are convinced that the product is good, and it is good. And the worst part is going to be when great products and brilliant founders are not able to make it only because they were not able to monetize it the way they have to. That in fact is worse than having a bad product, according to me, because you've done
Right.
so many things right. You're 60-70% there. And for the core 30%, it's not going to work out.
Yeah,
So
but who will you sell it to? You don't even know.
you don't know who you'll sell it to. You
Yeah.
How
don't know
they
what you'll commit to your investors. You don't know what your growth trajectory in terms of year on year numbers have to be. So
Oh,
basically, it's like you have a great product and you create a pitch deck and you're going to go to investors, and investors are going to ask you 10 questions, and you mostly will be able to answer one or two. And then obviously investments get delayed. So you see that whole, it's a cycle like that. We've seen so many founders struggle with that only because they are not able to instill the confidence in the investor that at the end of the day, we know how to make profit out of this. So
right.
Yeah.
investors accept the fact that, yes, I know your product is great. Tell me how you'll make profit. They can't speak convincingly because they didn't think of it that way. It's like an artist and a money manager. You need both in every business, no?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
the production and the innovation and the strategy in terms of what you do, what you design, that is the artist's work. But you also
Right.
need the number guy there,
Yeah.
because you might have the best product. If you can't monetize it, what do you want to do with it, right?
Yeah,
So,
but you have the
yeah.
advantage of being both.
Yes, but that's an advantage. There is a third element, because these are the skills bit of it. There's a
Yeah.
third element which is actually being, which experience brings you, which we didn't have, and that is the third element which we've built over a period of time. Why we also always tell founders that get mentors or get a panel of advisors. They don't need to be co-founders. Someone who has done something similar to what you have done, someone who knows something about various things, and they may just be there to guide. They don't need to be even a part of your business structure on a day-to-day basis. That's the
Hmm.
third element. So there'll be a lot of people, your new ideas with certain guidance of how things are actually done might be a great combination to get the results you want.
This episode is brought to you by a Money Tree. The Money Tree is offering a 10% discount on their coaching program for all our listeners. The coaching program offered include performance coaching, accountability coaching, and business coaching. Check out the description below for the referral link.
Absolutely. Like, I was laughing at that point because I am one of the kind of guys you have just explained who knows
Okay.
their who knows their tech, okay, but who is not very proficient with the financial part, right? So I would just like, from my behalf and talking for everyone else who is listening to our podcast, like, where to start for this financial knowledge to gain, where to start my journey, and what is the step by step process?
Can you guide us?
Yeah, can you
See,
guide us?
I think the basics that you need to know. I mean, are you asking where to start in terms of what is the content to learn first, or are you asking me from the point of where can you get this content? Which of the two?
I think both would.
Okay. So if we are talking of where to get it, for me, I think the primary area for getting this content is still going to be books. Yes, YouTube channels, yes, you can listen to podcasts, all of that. But when you go and type on YouTube or you go and Google something up, you're going to get hundreds of results. And you're not going to be in a position to know what can be, sort of verified or not. I still recommend the traditional way of read as many books as you can. If you're not an avid reader, You can, probably use Audible and maybe you can listen to it instead, or, whatever. The second thing, the most important thing, if you're entering a segment or a sector, or if you're already in a sector, you're desirous of doing a particular kind of business, let's say, get into that ecosystem. So there are associations, there are online and offline, groups which usually talk about this. You don't need to be, I'm not saying go to every party, go to every meeting. I'm not saying that, but be in that ecosystem, become parts of two, three, five, however many places that can be there based on what your bandwidth is, right? I mean, some may be paid also, but many of them are free associations actually.
Yeah.
They're very nominal memberships. So become part of those, subscribe to information that comes from there. Now why I'm talking about your business is somebody who has done this business before and has succeeded, has not done it only on the operations and technology. They already have the financial management aspect in there, which is ticked off, which is why they've been
Right.
able to succeed, right?
Yeah.
So that's an element also where that'll be financial management specific to your sector that you're looking for. That's the best place to get that. Or if you can get, a lot of people nowadays, on the side, they take up internships in places like that. You're doing it more because you want to learn. It's really not about, it can give you that kind of exposure. But if you look at a very generic financial education, I think there are several books that can teach you this. There are several channels that you can learn from. We're not talking of very high end, like I'm not asking you to kind of become a stock investment expert, or anything of that sort. Simple things like, do you understand the different kinds of, so I'm just telling you the content now, things that a founder should know, right? Do you understand the difference between what sales and what your variable cost and fixed cost is? Just a simple question. We tend to assume that everybody understands, but don't know. Within variable cost, do you know what is production cost and non-production cost? When it comes to variable and fixed, do you know how these two elements are going to impact what profit you make? Do you know what your break-even point is then? Do you know at what point you will start making a profit and how you can maneuver that or navigate that? You can do that by adjusting your fixed costs. You can't do much about your variable costs. So do you know, most of these are the very basic things, right? There are founders who don't know this also. Then we're talking about, once you get into your profit elements, or what is your product, as say, suppose you have three products or five
Yeah.
products in mind, or services in mind.
Yeah.
Do you know which of your product or service is bringing you which kind of contribution?
Right.
So what usually would happen is you'll have a sales figure. People know they have a sales figure. They calculate and then they realize, "Arey, but yeah, it's just about no loss and a profit." But they don't know which of the products are doing well. So
Right.
finance people know that, but non-finance founders tend to miss this part. Sometimes you may have one ace product. Maybe your product A is doing so well that you can actually discontinue the other three and it'll move you into a profit zone, but you don't know that because
Right.
you don't know how to read financial documents. So if you have any access to anyone who's going to be able to teach you this, there are so many even courses that happen which are finance for non-finance people,
Yeah.
basically very simplified formats of what are the first few things you should know. So nobody's asking every founder to become a stalwart in financial management, but at least enough for you to know, yaar, ki when I count the numbers, something is not going right. So
Right.
I can at least locate ki what is the area that I have to get seen to. Then you can at least get the right advice, or something of that sort.
Yeah. Agreed.
So I think it's a lifelong learning process. It's like financial management also evolves every not as fast as technology, but it does evolve every 2 to 3 years. So I think this also has to be an ongoing learning process. You can't there'll never be a point where you say, okay, I know how to do this. So there'll always be something that you can do better. And I've seen a lot of non-finance people who actually even compute and file their own taxes. So it's not like it can't happen. It's
Yeah.
more about what you're willing to do, how much you're willing to stretch.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. And I
Just go for it
actually,
everywhere. Anything that you can learn from any platform, just learn.
yeah, absolutely. And I think the point that to go into a community where people have already done that thing and to
Yeah.
learn from them is actually very important. And that's something we are trying to replicate here as well on this podcast by bringing you to this platform where you can share your experience, your expertise, so people can, you who are listening to this can learn, right?
Yeah.
So, moving on to the next part of the conversation, that is the recent things that are happening. So, we know from all these news portals and these gossip portals, such as Twitter,
Hmm.
that recession is upon us, right? And we can actually also see the effect of it, that all the big companies like Meta, Google, and all the big organizations are laying off people, right, to cut costs. And obviously, the startup system is obviously going to get affected by these things that are happening and by recession. So, what are your thoughts on this with respect to the startups? And how do you think the recession is going to affect in the coming time on the these startup ecosystem?
See, according to me, the companies you just named, and also many others who are currently
Right.
laying off people,
Mm,
are either companies that are not based or headquartered out of India, or they are those that are heavily depending on what is happening in the US and other places as of now.
Hmm.
The
yeah.
recession is more in the global context. If you
Mm,
look at the Indian context, the pure Indian context, honestly, we are still in a very good time when it comes to startups, or even when it comes to investments, whether it is investments that are coming in from outside or even Indian investors who are looking
right.
at startups. We are actually, Indian startups are in the best space right now. For the next couple of years, we are in a very, very good space. Having said that, of course, there can be a percolating effect of what is happening elsewhere. And to a certain extent, there is going to be a hit. But I personally feel that this hit is going to be more for a particular level and above. It's the mid-level and smaller, startups are not going to get impacted directly, because I doubt that many of these are doing any kind of direct business with, in a
Outside.
cross-border scenario as yet.
Right.
So those who have cross-border dependency might get affected. But when we talk of layoffs again, the question then is not about the startups or what happens to the business. It's more about what is happening to the employees. So that becomes a completely different thing. That's a corporate sort of issue. It's for people in service who are losing jobs. Actually, it is
Hmm.
not the businesses entirely who are losing money right now. So
Right.
why are they taking the
Mm,
call of laying off people at this point in time? Because we know that, I mean, see, as a business, you got to be prudent. You got to know that you have to anticipate what's going to happen in the next 2 years or 3 years, what percolating effect can be there. So I think to a certain extent, we have to accept the fact that their hands are also tied, which is what they have to lay off or cut costs in whatever ways they can,
right.
without getting into the good or bad or right or wrong of it. That's not what we're talking about here. But from a business perspective, cost cutting is something that every founder is going to face again at some point in time. It's very difficult to take a call to let people go for most of us, right? So I won't really comment on that effect of it. But when it comes to actual business profits, I still think that it's going to be a long time, if at all, the global recession is really going to have a direct impact on Indian startups. I don't think that's going to happen, because while we talk of even what the pandemic did, although on one hand, yes, we are talking about disparity getting bigger in India, and there being certain economic effects that Indians have had, especially
Yeah.
those in business and especially the middle class. Having said that, it is equally true that those who were able to navigate or maneuver, a lot of new businesses have mushroomed also. A lot of new successful businesses have mushroomed also. And a lot of people have been agile and actually built new models in the same time. So we are talking again of what kind of problem solving can you do? If your problem solving is now irrelevant because of the global recession, can you quickly find your relevance again? I think that is the secret. As an entrepreneur, you have to find a new problem to solve if that problem has become redundant, right?
Yeah. Figure out a turnaround
Yes,
strategy.
you have to, because recessions are going to happen, wars are going to happen. Look, there is so much
Mm,
news about all of that. Then wars
yeah.
are
Right.
going to happen, natural calamities are going to happen. It's sad, but there isn't much that we can do about it. What we
Right.
can do is what we can control. So if
Right.
there is a problem that I can't solve anymore because geographical boundaries or because that need is not there anymore or the relevance is not there anymore, then as an entrepreneur, it's my job to find new problems to solve.
Right.
So I don't see that as entrepreneurs. I don't think I don't know how to put this up, but I think, like I said, that's one of the key elements that makes you an entrepreneur, right?
Right.
So if I'm a
Absolutely.
problem solver, I have to even looking for new problems is not going to be a problem then.
Yeah. I think even at this time, a lot of problems are going to come out, and a lot of problem solvers are going to come out as well, and they are going to solve a
Yes,
lot of problems and start their own new
I think
startups.
recession is going to bring up new innovators. It's going to bring
Yeah.
up new thinkers. It's going to bring up new businesses. If it ever hits India that much,
Yeah.
I have my doubts about that.
It could be a evolution for the startup world.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I look at it that way. So yeah.
Yeah. So coming to the last part of this podcast, where we ask the guest speaker, that is you, to ask us a question. Since we have been asking you a lot of questions till now, we would last, like to ask you to ask
Ask
us a question,
ask us some questions
whatever
because
comes to you.
Okay, I'll ask you one question because I know a little about your journey. So let me just ask you that. So you said you all wanted to start out and then you found a few challenges and now both of you are in IT, but I think you're working with um so I just want to know what is now. Are you planning to get into like a full-fledged startup? Are you planning to what's your, with the podcast you've done with I'm sure you've done unlearning and learning. I'm sure you're problem solvers. So what's your plan? What's the kind of business plan you're looking at? What do you want?
Yeah. So I would like to go first on this.
sure,
Uh, Maybe Abha, you can take the second turn.
sure, no issues. I'll
Yeah.
think of something in that
Yeah,
time.
it will give you some window to think.
Yeah.
So actually, right now, according to me, the biggest problem is to figure out how the startup world works. That's why I'm also working in a startup, which is Corridor Technologies, and which is it is based in Bangalore. It's a IT, company, and that gives me a lot of insight of how the startup works. Plus, I want to, create a content that can actually help people to learn what I have
Yeah.
where I can share my knowledge and I can ask people the question that actually comes to my mind when I think about starting my own company. When I have an idea, I want to implement it, and I want to ask someone and I do not know who to ask. So I search for people who,
Mhm.
people like you who can actually answer those questions for me, and bring that content to uh, the YouTube and all these places. So yeah, right now my main focus is on content creation and learning as much as possible, because sooner or later I believe I am going to start a startup for sure. And if I have to start a startup, it's better to have that knowledge somehow, some way,
True.
and that's what I'm currently focusing on. But yeah, in next coming 3-4 years we might actually start maybe a technical or non-technical company. But
Okay.
yeah, that is for sure in the coming future.
Nice.
So yeah, so I'll go next. Like it's kind of same for me. Like as Abhas said, currently we are focusing on the knowledge that we can gain. Like we are we are kind of people who want to start things, okay, and we have started multiple things, we created multiple things, but somehow because of the lack of, as I said, financial knowledge and all the startup culture that is there, right? So
Yeah.
because of lack of that knowledge we weren't able to complete that process. So that's why we are aiming to achieve that knowledge from guys like you and all our other guests. And as Abhas said, we are also planning, like I'm also planning in like next upcoming 5 years, we we will start something.
Yeah, definitely, because it's that itch in our head to do something out of the box, to solve someone's issue, to resolve
Correct.
something,
Like and
Yes.
and
that never goes away.
this is very something nice that we both have, we have some idea, and we like once in a month, we at least once in a month we sit together and we
Yeah.
discuss on that, all of our ideas, and try to materialize them, like
Yeah.
try to make a pathway how can we materialize them. And they do our research, we do the thinking process,
Yeah.
and all of those things.
Actually, even now we are
Wonderful.
in the middle of, thinking about what we can do in, like, if we are going to start a startup in next 3 years, 4 years, then what we can do and how we can start, and what is the problem we find most interesting. So yeah,
Hmm.
that is something we are doing.
And just one quick thing that I want to share,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that this idea about this podcast, we we thought about it and we discussed it on in a coffee shop.
Yeah.
Okay.
We we made our first banner for this podcast in a coffee shop. We were sitting together and Abhas got his laptop, and we were like, okay, we can do this thing, we can like
Yeah.
do this.
Yeah.
Actually, even content creation has become such a big thing today, right? I mean,
Right.
some podcasts and all, podcast itself might become your podcast could become your who knows whether
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Hopefully, let's
content
we are
hope
is
for
something
that.
that you're
we are
passionate
planning for
about.
that too.
Yes,
Yeah. So
that's
before
wonderful.
we
Yeah.
end, ma'am, Dhanashree, I would really like to ask you to give an advice for those aspiring entrepreneurs who are coming in the startup world now, and how they can aim for, higher probability of success and avoid as many pitfalls as possible. What is the one advice you would really like to give?
I think one of the first few things I would say is what I just shared a little while ago. The first thing would be to evaluate whether as an aspiring entrepreneur you've got it in you to be a problem solver in the long haul.
Hmm.
Sometimes certain things look very glamorous from the outside, but thinking it through. I'm talking of people who are aspiring entrepreneurs, right? That's what you asked. So sometimes we just think, oh, I want to become an entrepreneur because I want to be my own boss. That's
Yeah.
the last reason in the world you should do that, because you're not going to be your own boss. Everybody is going to become your boss after you become an entrepreneur. Then you're
Yeah.
answerable and accountable to everyone. So,
Right.
I think be evaluate whether you as a person, your personality and temperament is suited for the kind of day in and day out that an entrepreneur's life requires. Firstly, do it for the right reasons. Secondly, I think also there are some questions that entrepreneurs can ask themselves, other than knowing that they have the risk appetite and they are problem solvers. Other than that, I think a few questions they can ask themselves to find what sector they could work in if they want to. Just saying I want to be an entrepreneur is not enough. What is the product or services? What kind of sector that you want to work in? Is your skill, firstly. Two, what do you think you're good at? And three, I think what is lucrative for you, based basis what kind of financial needs that each person might have. So I think these three questions can point towards a direction as to what kind of sector might work best for you. Because if you have the skill, you can continue to upskill and be in there. If
Yeah.
you know your financial needs, you know that this can suffice. Otherwise, sometimes burnouts also happen because of that. You're in the right place, you enjoy what you're doing, you're solving problems, all that, but it's not bringing you the kind of money that you require for your life or lifestyle or number of dependents or whatever. So I think the study of this, I won't even call it study, it's like simple stuff to do. But I think these are three questions that every aspiring entrepreneur should ask themselves to find the sector they want to be in. I think being a part of the ecosystem before you actually take the plunge,
Yeah.
the other thing that in whatever way you can do an internship, you can just join associations, like I said, but be inside of the ecosystem to really assess whether that's the place you really want, you know. So I think that I also think a very important and a practical element. I mean, all of the previous ones are questions you ask yourself and all, but the practical element is evaluating at what point, if you have dependents, people who financially depend on you. I mean, if one is married or parents, kids, anyone else, actually, I think it's important to know that you can keep aside 12 months of your living costs, maintaining the standard of living you're maintaining at this point in time before you take a full-time plunge into business. This is something people don't do because they are over idealistic. They feel
Yeah.
I'll start making profits in 3 months. It may not happen. Well, 3 months, it will not happen. But even if you talk of, I'm sorry to be blunt, but that's how it is.
Yeah,
No
that
one
is
will
actually true.
break even
That
in
is very true.
That
yeah.
is what we
So I
want.
think 12 months is a basic minimum living cost you have to be able to keep aside if you have dependents, so that you're not making everybody suffer along with you when you're fighting your battles. And yeah, I think more or less this is I think a good set of and getting skilled, of course, in
Yeah.
whatever sector you decide. You may have certain level of skills, but and the last, but according to me, very, very important, financial education, so that
Right.
you're not depending on somebody else to do the number crunching for you. At least
Right.
basic number crunching,
Yes.
every founder must know how to do.
Right. So
Absolutely.
we'll surely take your points in our consideration and we'll keep it in mind and we'll do our
Yeah.
work for that.
Yeah. We needed that.
Great. I'm hoping this podcast is like really, really going to, add numbers and get guests, and more than that, really get it's a very important thing that you're doing. It's giving a platform to people, to match people who might have things to share with
Yeah.
people who really need, all of this, rather than, just going all over the internet looking for things. And so I think
Right.
I just hope that the mission you're on is, it grows and it reaches out to people and really helps people transform
Yeah. And
their
actually, we
businesses.
also we also talk about the things that we are getting information from. Like we have discussed different podcasts as well. We
Hmm.
do not see people as a competition. We see that okay, this is a platform where you can learn from. Take this
Correct.
information up.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like we have talked about
Right.
Barbershop by Shantanu,
Hmm.
the guy who is a owner of Bombay Shaving Company,
Yeah.
right? That Raj Shamani show, and a lot of these things that people can actually learn from. We also like people to know these things, because if you are listening
Yes.
to us, then you should also listen to them, because we also
Right.
listen to them.
Correct. Correct.
Right.
That's a great approach. I think entrepreneurs should also always be aware that there is enough in the world for everyone. Everyone
Yeah.
can succeed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not it's not exclusive. It's not always competition.
Yeah,
It's good to have
absolutely.
that little competition inside, of course,
Yeah, of course.
but
Otherwise, how will you improve?
good. Exactly, exactly. But just enough
Yeah,
for the
just enough.
So on that note, let us all create a collaborative environment in our entrepreneur society. And
absolute.
thank you so much, Dhanashree, for being our
Thanks,
guest, for
Apar.
being on
Thank
this
you,
podcast.
Apar.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you so much. It was a pleasure being here.
Yeah.
Same
Okay.
for us. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Abhas say hi. Hello. Hope you loved the episode. Yeah, so the biggest point was when Dhanashree said that she was failing her startup, and most of people left, but both the owners, she and her current co-founder, stick there, and she resolved that issue instead of leaving that part, even though they knew it was a sinking ship. So that moment was like really mind blowing, because mostly you think that okay, if the startup is failing, it's a sinking ship, and you know it, then you should stop. Yeah, like that's how I used to think about it. But after she talked about it and discussed her opinion and how she did it, I'm actually quite inspired.
And being a tech guy, okay, what I got very like intriguing from there was that her analytical part. She said that she stick to it, she and her partner stick to it, and they analyze the tactics they have used and where they got wrong.
Yeah.
As in today's era, analytics is one thing which is in boom,
Hmm.
because data is everything in today's time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So analytics is an important part.
Yeah.
And in this, being analytic and analyzing where the startup has gone wrong, financial literacy also plays a very important role.
Actually, I think finance literacy is something that most startup founders, think in a way that okay, we'll hire a CA or we'll
Mhm.
hire someone to do that for us. But अगर तू खुद ही नहीं करेगा तो who is gonna help you out?
Exactly, एक बेसिक लिटरेसी होनी जरूरी है.
Yeah, अभी let's say we start a startup and we don't know कि पैसे आ रहे हैं but पैसे जा कहाँ रहे हैं, लग कहाँ रहे हैं,
हाँ,
कैसे हो रहा है. And because we
absolutely.
don't have the exact idea of how the money works.
Exactly.
And for a very long time, for most bootstrap startups, you cannot hire people to manage
हाँ,
your finance, but you can learn about it.
exactly. So
Right?
on that note, we will also learn more and enhance our financial literacy, and we hope that you guys do that too. So
Okay.
press the bell icon, hit like button, and subscribe to our channel, RoboSapien Podcast.
Until next time, keep learning and stay curious.